I wanted to just do a quick introduction again in case you missed her last week. But this is, hey everybody, this is Jackie the intern, and Jackie's great. You might get a chance to meet her at WPI, and that'll be fun. I'll try to not have two heads coming out of my shoulder, so I'll move around and get in the proper position here. Just a second. There we go. But she's doing some editing for us, which is great. And as people are jumping on, I'm going to introduce Mike. Hey, Mike Larson, welcome to the show, my friend.
How's it going?
Good. Glad you're here.
How are you?
For those of you who don't, I'm doing really well. You know, there's a slight delay, so we both have to figure out a way to talk without talking over each other. And I'll take the burden on. That's my deal. But I want to give folks at home a little bit of context for this conversation. Mike has been a friend and a brother in our faith for a long time, and has played a really pivotal role and a voice in my own life. And I'm really excited to have him on for a lot of reasons. One, he's an incredible photographer, and as a photographer, he will have a lot to say that I think will be beneficial for you as a creative professional. But just as a person, Mike is someone who cares a lot about our industry and is really trying to do more than just make good pictures. He wants to have a great life, not just for himself, but for those he works with, making good on kind of who he was made to be. And in that way, he's been an inspiration to me for a long time. As a small business owner, he's someone who regularly models trying to set an environment for his staff to really flourish. And if you've ever had a chance to hear Mike speak publicly, he's spoken all over the world. He is someone who inspires people, empowers people, and isn't just interested in calling it in. He's interested in actually helping move people to a new level, as he himself is inspired to do the same. So with that as an intro, and hopefully Mike won't stink it up today, we'll have a good conversation. So, Mike, thanks again for being here.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So, for those of you who are jumping on, the way the show works is you can participate or you can spectate. There's always plenty of spectators, but the participants usually get the most value out of our time. And if you're on the vocal interface, the way you can join in is you can click the lower right hand corner. There's a little light bulb, and if you hover over it, it'll say questions. If you click it, you can actually start typing questions. And if you're brave among you, might even want to click the video question and log in, and we'll pull you on the screen as well. But the way the conversation goes is Mike and I will be chatting, and then the third person in the conversation is you. And you can ask questions, you can make comments. It's really just sitting around like we're having coffee. And that's really where Fast Track Coaching came from. Is I've been in enough coffees with enough remarkable people that I wanted to share that conversation. And we've often said, wouldn't it be great if we could have a camera on this conversation, because it seems like it could be valuable for a lot of folks. So that's what our intention is. And if this is valuable for you, not only would I encourage you to talk about it out loud, but talk with us and engage the conversation, because that'll actually raise the bar for everybody. So, Mike, what I'm interested in starting the conversation with is, and the way I framed our whole theme for today, is really around. Oh, is that Rachel? Who's that?
That's Chloe. She's one of our
Hi, Chloe.
photographers. Want to say hi? You're live.
Hi, Chloe.
Dane Sanders.
What's that? Hi.
This is Chloe. She's one of our fabulous associates, and she does all of our sales for our team.
That's great.
She's great.
Thank you. So the theme of our conversation today. I will get through this. The theme of the conversation today is really around defining your style. And this is a topic that I think a lot of photographers are really confused about and intrigued about, and we need help with. Because there's so many great photographers out there who are working right now that yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing, Mike. There's that. It seems like the temptation is to look at these great photographers and emulate them, and to try to find a style that might inspire me, but isn't really what I'm made to do. And an example of that in my own life recently was I had a chance to go to Jerry Ghionis's workshop in early January, and Jerry shoots in a style that's very different than anything I've ever done. I really have a ton of draw to, but his style is so uniquely him. It's funny, I was hanging out shooting with him for a week and then left that, and I've been doing a number of other sessions, photo sessions since, and I found myself being kind of drawn back to try to shoot in his style. But the topic today isn't just about shooting style, it's about style beyond that. And I'm wondering if you could talk just for a few minutes, Mike, on when you say inviting someone to define their style and discover their style and put it out on display for other people to see. What do you mean by defining a style? Is it strictly with shooting, or is there more to the conversation than just shooting?
Well, that's a good question, and that's actually something I've been searching a lot for over the last year and a half. And here's what I've come up with, and I've been definitely done my research. Here's the basic scoop: is can people hear me? I guess they're saying it's a little bit quiet.
Yeah, I can hear you pretty well.
I'm trying to speak louder.
Okay.
Okay. Twofold. The first element of your style is, as a photographer, we look at our style mostly in a sense of what our images look like. And so you could take for example, this style of the type of images you shoot, which kind of is determined by the type of clients you have. And as a photographer, we can look at that and say, I like that. My style is. And photographers now are pushing the differences with their style, and some of them are even saying, well, I'm an anthropology style photographer, or I'm an editorial lifestyle photographer, and those general categories work for a photographer to a degree. However, there is an element of our style that I think isn't transferred to our clientele. I'm going to just kind of delve through a couple topics that I think are foundational for this. The first is, and this I didn't agree with when I first heard it, but 90% of brides can't tell the difference between good and great images. They can tell the difference between average, crappy, and good, but they can't really tell the difference between good and great. Yet most photographers spend all this time trying to get from good to great. And if they don't have a style that the consumer can say, hey, here's why this photographer is great, and if they don't have some type of niche, if they don't have some type of defining term or description on why they are unique, then oftentimes your clients or the people that refer you are at a loss for words for how to describe you. Let me give you an example. If you were to look at say the photographers in my region that I shoot with, there are a lot of good photographers, and there are a lot of kind of average photographers that maybe shoot 5 to 6 weddings a year. They're kind of semi-professional and whatever. I can't necessarily compare myself against them because they aren't really my competition. And the people who are my key referrers aren't necessarily saying, yeah, they could say, yeah, Mike's better than these guys because Mike does things full time. But the question came up is, how am I different than the people that are neck and neck competition-wise? Because I can't say, well, I try harder, or I can capture the moments that no one else can, because if you were to Google that, 5,000 photographers would come up with that same quote that,
right.
I capture images that no one else does, or whatever. And so my point with this is saying that when we are defining our style needs to be twofold. It needs to be something that we identify with and inspires us as a photographer, but it also has to be defined. What do I specialize in? What am I known for? Which means that I can't do everything. And I'll be honest, a recent blog post that I did of Tara and Ryan in Australia, I had all these shots of them surfing and doing all these things, which was great. But then at the very end, I had a flash shot in downtown Sydney at night. Now, I thought that shot was cool, but as I started to look at it more, I realized I kind of broke style from the entire style of the previous 15 images from that shoot. The 16th image was outside the parameters of that style that I was capturing. So as a photographer, I've realized that I need to find something that I can passionately do and redo and continue to do and explore and slowly push the direction of the style of photography that I want to choose. But on the other hand, I need to have something that my clients and the people that refer me can share. I have to have a reason why I'm different. And one of the things that I've decided that defines me as my style as a photographer, it used to be I'm a lifestyle editorial photographer that shoots engagement or weddings and portraits. And gosh, Dane, you probably remember this, 5 or 6 years ago, I think being a wedding photographer 7 years ago was kind of a specialty. I mean, there weren't a lot of photographers that just photographed weddings. But now, everyone does weddings. And so
right.
The specialization, my style that I've chose to hone is a wedding photographer who specializes in shooting vineyards and estate-style weddings. So I've chosen kind of a niche in that area. That's what I'm going to specialize in. That's my style.
Let's talk. I want to talk about this for a second, Mike, because I'm intrigued on a lot of levels about what you're saying. And by the way, if you're listening in and you want to join in the conversation, the easiest way to do that is to just jump on and click the light bulb and ask the question. But as you're talking, a lot of things are springing to mind, and people are even commenting a little bit in the chat room about it. But it sounds like you're right. Like the evolution of our industry, it's maturing. So it used to be, I'm a photographer who shoots animated objects. So it could be pets, it could be babies, it could be portraits, it could be weddings, it could be whatever. And there is a greater degree of specialization going on, especially as it pertains to a style. Because if you're going to look at a body of work, and there's certain photographers, not a ton of them, but there's certain photographers, like Jerry Ghionis is a great example. I see a Jerry Ghionis image and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. It's a high fashion glamour image that he's like one of the best on the planet at. And by defining narrowly what those are from a body of work perspective, it's more noteworthy. If people are looking for that kind of a look, there's only one person they think of, they win. And at the same time, the tension I'm hearing is, okay, if let's say I've been at this for like less than 5 years, it takes a significant amount of exploration to find out what it is that I like. What is that kind of defined set of parameters that I want to design my career around, where people go, yeah, that's a signature Mike Larson, or that's a signature whoever. So comment a little bit about that. Like how does one get to a point when they can define their style in a narrow way? And related to that, I'm curious, are there some negative impacts of defining yourself so narrowly that you're going to miss out on jobs or miss out on opportunities as things progress with your career?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think the best way to answer that is for me to kind of digress a little bit into the history of how I started. I got inspired when I was like 12 years old by Ansel Adams. And an Ansel Adams print stands out bar none. Anyone can pick out an Ansel Adams print.
Right.
There's a style. There's a consistent style to it. And I think for me, that was the first time I recognized style in art. As something consistent and within the boundaries. If Ansel Adams started to do, I don't know, color.
It's like you froze for a second. You're back. Actually, go ahead and Say that one more time.
If Ansel Adams decided to do color beat shots, there'd be a little bit of a dichotomy in our minds as to why, for what he was doing. If he started doing, and actually it's funny because to support a lot of Ansel Adams' work, he actually photographed grade school portraits. And there's a photo that my photo teacher showed me, and this forever changed my perspective on photography. She showed me this picture of Ansel Adams photographing a second grade school photo with his 8x10 camera. And I don't remember what the caption was, but it was something to the degree of, every photographer has to make money somehow. Now the Ansel Adams Foundation is worth millions, but I think that's directly because of how it was marketed and branded. Is Ansel Adams gallery collections. They go together. You can put 2 together, 3 together, 4 together. Moving back to your question of in terms of choosing, that's the hard part. Choosing, I'm going to have to say no to hotel weddings, but that's okay, because here's what I've really realized is that I need to be first in the mind in some category, or I'm a generalist. And I didn't like that at first, because I thought that for years, because I said, no, in my business, I think accidentally succeeded despite my not choosing. And, I realized after a while, I was like, what, everyone's doing weddings everywhere. And we're kind of like fitting these holes. And I don't know, after doing that for so long, I just feel like, I feel like I'm just like everyone else. And so over the last year and a half, I've been realizing, I've been slowly wrapping my mind around, which has been a long process, but realizing that I got to choose. I have to choose what I need to say no to. But that means that what goes on my blog, what I talk about, walking the walk, talking the walk, has to be consistent and similar. If it's not, I'm not sending the right messaging out, and I'm confusing the people that are referring me. Because if I tell them, I'm only a vineyard and estate, wedding photographer, and I post a bunch of stuff on, I don't know, I shoot a bunch of weddings at Best Western and I post them all on there, people are going to go, whoa, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. Your words aren't matching up with what you're saying, and that doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this for a second. Because there's a lot of directions you can go with this, but I love what you're saying in that you're not just saying let's specialize weddings relative to the whole photo genre. Let's within weddings get even more narrow and more niche-y, and especially as it relates to the branding of messaging, both with your words and the images you put out there. What I'm hearing you say is you want to have a signature Mike Larson look, where whether even people are thinking about it or are unconscious to it, they immediately clue into this. If I'm going to do something, if I'm doing a Napa Vineyard wedding, the only person I'm going to think of is Mike Larson. Or it's just like if a celebrity is going to get a portrait done, they think of Annie Leibovitz right away, because that is kind of her. She's portraits, but she's very narrow into this. You need to, if you're going to get a portrait done and you're a celebrity, like I am the one that you want to get it done with, or whoever. And I like that. What about exploration, though? Because I've been in conversations with guys like Nick Onken and Jeremy Cowart and others who they're actually wanting a singular look, but they want a diversity of contexts for clients, at least in the commercial world, to go, if I'm going to shoot jumping people, I'm going to think of Nick Onken. If I'm going to shoot, I don't know, some other kind of angle, I know for Jeremy, a lot of it is around getting a lot of really cool look and feel out of a minimal setup. But in all of these examples, this tension of both, I want to push the thresholds of what I'm doing with my craft without being so narrowly focused, but also be narrowly focused enough where people go, oh, that's him. That's the signature I'm looking for. That I want to hear more from you on how you hold that tension, because I've shot with you before. I've been around you. You do push the threshold when you shoot, but is this just a matter of what I'm going to put on my website, or is this a matter of really where I'm going to spend most of my time, with my camera is around this very nicheified area. Are you limited that way?
Well, let me just kind of address the first part of your question, because you kind of mentioned two parts in there. You mentioned a couple of the photographers, with Jeremy Cowart, who does have a very unique style. But I would consider his unique positioning to be less of a location. Mine is a little bit more location based, which means I need to be a specialist on all the elements that surround those locations, knowing when lighting is the best, when, what locations are the best, and kind of highlighting those. His is more or less utilizing people, and I love Jeremy's work. And his style is a lot more maybe camera based. I don't know if that's the right terminology, or a little bit more conceptual based than location based. There's other photographers, like Annie Leibovitz, who is much more celebrity person. It's based on the person. It doesn't it could be anywhere. A lot of her stuff kind of varies a little bit. Some of it's in the studio, some of it's on set, some of it's totally environmental. And I know that Jeremy, I was talking with him last week, and he actually really enjoys the environmental side of things too, moving away from the studio type shots. But he still enjoys all of that. Another photographer, who I really admire, Jose Villa, is not as much location, but he captures things with he's got like a retro throwback look to all his work, where it's kind of, I don't want to pin it necessarily on the style of his shooting, but he has uniquely found a way to make his photography, the photography itself, be very unique. I would argue that there are less than 0.1% of photographers in the country, and you're welcome to disagree with me, and we can still be friends, to all of you who are listening. But I think it's less than 0.1% of photographers who can stand on their images being so unique that they could be, someone could pull them out of 1,000 photographers and say, this one's different. And I think the perfect example of this is, look at the WPPI, awards. I know people who have an awesome style. They put it up there and it doesn't win anything, and they're looking at the other work going, gosh, there's a lot of stuff here that's the same, but there's where's the level of competing? It's subjective, and everyone's got their own opinions, and it's very hard to, it takes work to establish a category and be first in that. And I think going on to your other question about, how does that start from the beginning of you being a photographer? Well, what do you like? Well, gosh, I didn't know what I liked. I started off shooting landscapes. I hated shooting people. In fact, if a person was in a shot, one of my landscape shots, this is pre-Photoshop, I would specifically either hold up some kind of leaf or something, so that they weren't in the background of that shot, or wait. And then as time went on, I started to realize I had an affinity and a passion for capturing people. So yes, my style changed over time, but I think that's the freedom of being an artist, is you can evolve what you're doing. And I think to some degree, it should have a healthy evolution to kind of reposition down the path of what you like, and what you realize is not only what you like, but also it's a profitable sector to be in. I realized landscape photography was not profitable. Maybe I just couldn't find a way to make it profitable. I love it. I still really enjoy my Hawaii collections that I've shot when I've spent time in the surf industry. I was in the surf industry for 4 years, and I realized that I could not create the niche that I wanted to in the way that market was heading. So I got out of that in 2004 and got back into wedding photography. I realized at that time I was jumping into a niche market, and over time, everyone is shooting weddings, and I realized I needed to start specializing. And it's fun. It is fun to specialize in something, because when you have a specific, clear goal of what you want to do, it's that simple. You wake up every day and you ask yourself, is what I'm doing getting me closer to this specific goal? And if it's not, then I don't do it. If it is, then that's what I do. And that gives me freedom to not be wandering and trying too many things and getting distracted by too much. Because let's be honest, in this life, there's too much good stuff. There's too many things to explore. I'm an adventurer, and I think you know as well as me that we could get lost in years of exploring stuff, and then all of a sudden realize, I got to pay the bills.
Well, yes, it's so funny because I thought you were going to go in one direction, and then you went in a different one. In that, you're right that life is short, and I want to be spending my time around the things that I am passionate about, and I think that the more narrow I go, as you say, within that little narrow niche, there's a lot more to explore. It's like infinite canvas that I can go deep into and discover, or go broad and open up, and I think that makes sense. And at the same time, there is this kind of marketability tension of being a professional creative: is how am I going to make money? How am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to take care of the folks that are dependent on me? And if I'm hearing you right, you're saying, gosh, the way to have your cake and eat it too is to pursue that passion in a narrow, disciplined way, say no to a lot, be known for something in particular, be the best in the world at that one thing, and you'll find the right amounts of people to hire you. And when I'm in agreement, I think when I feel like I'm in a constant search for what is that more narrow thing, because if I say yes to everything, I'm going to be pretty overwhelmed pretty quickly. And to not just pick one that is interesting to me, but to pick an area of my life that is most fulfilling, kind of most what I'm supposed to be doing. So as you're talking, I'm just so drawn to the idea, but I can still hear in my ear, like the people who are on the other end of this video asking questions about, okay, how does this relate to me? That's great for you, Mike. You've been a surfer. You are an outdoorsman. You are defined. I don't feel defined right now, and I'm insecure that I'm not going to make enough money with my business if I pick one and I pick the wrong one. What do you say to that person who's just honestly scared of picking an area and quote unquote picking wrong? How would you direct them as a friend to be responsible with who they are as a creative, but also who they are as a business owner?
I think great question, and there's a couple questions I want to answer that I noticed people writing as well. So the questions of choosing. How do you make money as an artist? Choose. Here's the hard thing that I think I've finally realized how to quantify this. We grow up through high school, and everyone tells us we have to be the most well-rounded person in the world. They tell us we have to be doing these sports and getting these A's and doing all these things, and we have to get, we have to be at all these extracurricular things. And you go into the counselor, and she's like, well, you're a little unbalanced here. You kind of need another volunteer position, And then you're like, okay, all right, well, I'll do that. That means I have to go up till, I can't go to bed till 1 a.m. And we're trained through, and I'll be honest, I did everything. I did sports year round. I did Boy Scouts. I was volunteering. I was doing all this stuff. And I think a lot of us are in the same boat as Americans. We're trained to do a little bit young age to be generalists and not miss any opportunities. And as entrepreneurs, getting into the business, I'll be honest, early on I did everything. And I put on my business card, I specialize in weddings, portraits, pets, landscape,
right,
people, I don't know, everything. How do you specialize in everything? However, you ask the question, how do you make money? The thing is that we think we are more unique than we are. And I don't mean that to sound pessimistic, but let me say this is an encouraging thing. I would rather fail. I would rather choose a direction and fail early and then get up and try again than walk the wide path and be like everyone else. And the reason why I think this is important to realize is that it's important. Everyone has to choose, because you're either going to be And there's an analogy that actually a true story of when Intel or IBM was responding to Apple with their new 2GS that came out years ago. And the CEO of IBM got up and said, "This is the best device for home computer use," which meant Apple had another 15 years until they were going to be having computers in the professional workplace. They positioned Apple because Apple didn't position themselves. If we don't position ourselves, if we don't pursue a unique position in business, we will by default be lumped into a generalist, because if you look at new photographers that are coming on the scene, everyone loves photographing most everything. The other argument is that in order to be paid a premium, we need to have a specialty, because that's valued. And there's the quick analogy here, I don't want to go into this too deep, but the analogy of hiring a handyman, which $15, $20 an hour, hiring an electrician, $75 an hour. There's an obvious pay discrepancy there. Why? Because one's a specialist, and one only does that, and people value that. The third option is a bellman, or the person who then calls the electrician to hire that guy. These guys are paid a lot because they are experts or know how to get the experts. Here's my question: is to those out there that are asking questions like, how do I do this? How do I pick something? I only need 25, 30 weddings a year. I only need 25 or 30 weddings at estates. How many weddings are at estates and vineyards for me to be able to get those weddings and succeed? I don't need every single wedding at as many different places as I possibly can. I realize that that's kind of a fallacy in my thinking, kind of an insecure, as entrepreneurs, we kind of have to be risky. We have to do something that other people aren't going to do. And photography, the barrier to entry is becoming easier and easier, which in some ways makes it easier for us to choose because no one else is choosing. So when we start to choose a specialty, we need place. When we become branded with that and first in the mind of the people who are referring us, the venues and the coordinators, that's all the work we'll get, and we no longer have to even worry about turning away work because we'll be known as the expert. And I've seen that happen, and I'm confident telling you guys that those of you who are listening that, it is risky, and I'm not going to guarantee you that the first thing you pick is going to work. But once you pick something you love, and you do it, and you start to hone in and do it well, and if you love it, people will be able to tell, and they'll say, gosh, you know what? I see some people on here. They'll say Katrina Wheeler is the best photographer at capturing fill in the blank. Dan Bailey is absolutely an expert in this field. They'll know that, and they'll say that, and they'll be able to tell. They won't say, well, gosh, his pictures are great, or her pictures are the best, because what does that mean? Like, how do you compare yourself when you're just comparing against how cool your pictures are?
Fascinating, man. I gotta pull here. On so many levels, I'm jumping off. I'm so glad we're hanging out in a couple weeks in Las Vegas, by the way, because this is a conversation I want to extend in a lot of directions, and I hope that it spawns. As I'm looking at the Twitter action and all the folks that are jumping into the conversation in different places in the chat room and in the questions that are going to pop up here in a minute. You're tapping into something, Mike, and especially as it relates to risk and creativity. To break it down, if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is, look, if my job is to book, let's say, 30 or 40 high-caliber weddings in a year, if that was my goal, then to nicheify down to vineyard weddings, given the sheer volume of how many of those there are, to book 30 or 40 jobs in a year, in a calendar year, just doesn't seem that unreasonable. And to up your chances by being the only person that comes first to mind, I get how it feels both like a risk, and I also get why not everybody does it, and I also get that those who do seem to flourish because they have to get committed at a level that is a lot higher than everyone else who's just generically saying, I'm going to shoot everybody's stuff.
Dane, you hit on that right there. I've spoken in 12 countries around the world, and over the last 4 years, since 2007, and the risk that Americans take for their desire for innovation, for their desire to, because we can't fall back on anything. I mean, if my business fails, what happens? I don't go, I mean, no offense to this, but I don't go on the dole. Like, I got to make it work. And so I have this tenacity that, but here's the thing I've realized is that I'm an entrepreneur. I've probably started 6 or 7 businesses in my lifetime. And a lot of them I've tried to start at the same time. And I've realized that I can't diversify and split up all my areas of time to all these different things, because if I don't focus on what's the main, if I don't keep the main thing, then I got everyone else who's right up there. But if I focus all of my effort on one area and say, this is what I'm going to do, that in itself is going to stand out. I mean, just the fact that I've made a choice is going to separate me. But it's also going to make clear my to-do list, and it's going to give my to-do list a filter. I think everyone listening, everyone in the world, myself included, needs a filter of my to-do list. If I could go through and say, you know what, 20% of these things aren't going to get me towards my goal, screw it. Done, deleted. That would be a blessing.
Right. Wow. Okay, so let's take a couple questions from our folks who've been very patient. Christine asked the question, how do you balance between going outside of the box and yet having a consistent portfolio for clients?
Good question, Christine. You can explore, my view on this, and like I said, with everything I'm sharing here, you're welcome to disagree with me, and we can still be friends. But you're going outside the box. I think every photographer should go outside the box and explore areas. I don't want to say to make sure you're not missing anything, but pushing the edge is something I always do. Getting risky with shots, exposures, trying things that you weren't sure were going to come out, pushing, my clients' comfort zones with respect to who they are and what they want to do. That I think that's extremely important. Now, if I go down a path that I feel like I want to nudge my work, slowly nudging it towards a new, I can do that on my blog. I can do that in my portfolio. But I think that having something that is consistent for my clients gives them, it corroborates the reason why they were referred to me.
So, related to this, the people who are watching, I keep wanting to get in their perspective, in their seat. It's one thing to look at where you're at right now, Mike, and see your path, identify it, and name and claim a distinct style that's yours. But if I'm a weddings, parties, and anything kind of photographer, and I've shot everything and will shoot anything because I'm just kind of desperate to make money, but I buy into this philosophy and I want to make a leap to name and claim what's mine, what advice would you give them? What's the first thing you'd say, like, do this first, for them to kind of take the theory and make it real in their own lives?
I think the first thing that you need to do is determine who you are and what's most important to you.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Say more about that.
I'm going to tell you, because I think the saddest thing that I see is any person in any career gets so saturated in their job that they lose their life. And that's sad to me, and I see that all over the world. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, Mike, I was talking to photographers in the Philippines last year, and these guys are coming up to me saying, I photograph 600 weddings a year for $300 a wedding, and I hate it. And I said, well, can you stop? And they're like, I can't. And they had created this system that they were trapped in, and I was just sitting there thinking, and it's not just photographers, it's everyone. it is dangerous to not have boundaries in your personal life. So I wanted to say that. Define who you are personally, define what your to-be list is, and don't let what you do degrade who you want to be. That's the first thing. What was the second part?
Well, we might not get to the second part, but I want to hang out here for a minute. This idea of, first off, you threw out a to-be list, not a to-do list, which I think is genius in and of itself. But along those lines, are you saying that if I am relating the to-dos to my who I am, to my to-be list, I should be thinking about how would I like to, if I could wave a magic wand and pick anything for today stylistically with my camera that I would spend the bulk of my time doing, and even the volume of that I should just declare that out loud and say, kind of hope that it'll come to be? Or am I missing something in that? Is it that easy that I can just declare in, I don't want to shoot 300 weddings a year for $300. I just want to do something different.
Yeah, 600 weddings a year for $300.
Good point.
Just to clarify, here's the thing: if you're out the photographer out there and you're thinking, hey gosh, I just don't know what I want to do yet. So I mentioned someone on here made an interesting question. Galuk Photography. Sounds like you're from Europe or Germany. Question: I'm currently trying to find out my specialism, but I can't. But I find I'm not there yet. I still like to try more studio photography, but does it make sense to take all jobs or for me to concentrate in that one already? Here's the thing. I think when you first choose, you may already have stuff booked. But I think you have to choose and then give yourself a predetermined goal where you say, look, within 1 year, this is what I'm going to do. And if you have existing jobs, I have one wedding at the Montecito Country Club this year. Okay,
yeah.
Like that, I'm still going to do that. I'm not going to cancel on it. But it doesn't mean I'm going to go make that my feature work on my portfolio. They're
right.
creating a dichotomy with what my positioning is. So I think that there can be a gray period in which we transition, but it needs to be as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And we have a team of associates that we have that do some of the jobs that I refer off to them, and so now they're doing the hotel job. So, I know a lot of photographers are having an associate come on, and there's an opportunity. This gets into a whole other area. Don't take associates unless it's in the direction you want to go. My point is that if I have a general, if there's a generalist associate who really would take anything, and I'm the specialist, you know what? That works. If it's the soul man and you're doing or soul woman, and you're doing it on your own, at some point when you meet the coordinators and you meet the venues and you talk to them about what you are and what you do, you got to think, what are they going to tell the brides that come in? A bride's going to come in and talk to the coordinator, and they're going to say, yeah, I'm just looking for a photographer for our wedding here at the vineyard. Who do you recommend? And if the coordinator says, you know what, this is the only photographer that specializes in shooting at small luxury hotels, they're perfect for you. I got the perfect photographer for you. This photographer specializes in shooting Indian weddings, or it's the only thing they do. That's going to separate you more so than if they said, oh my gosh, this photographer's pictures are awesome. Because how many times have we been at a party where someone's like, oh, what do you do? Look. And then they show you their pictures on their phone, and not to put that down, but
let's put it down. Let's. Katrina asked the question. I forget how long were you into your wedding business that you started choosing your style, that is in vineyards?
Well, good question.
You said this already, but some people might have missed it.
Yes, that's okay. I realized that vineyards in the States is pretty much 85 to 90% of what I'm already doing. So your style doesn't necessarily have to be a new direction. You may be already doing most of that anyways. And in your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm doing all these other things, and I'm doing these. But if you were to write down all of where your work comes from, and you were to say, okay, wow, I have 70% of my jobs that come from this, which brings in 80% of my income. which I would imagine a lot of photographers are probably in this group. You got 20% of your work that you're spending more than 20% of your time probably trying to diversify and network and spread the wealth of what you do and create the buzz. Why not cut that out, spend that, take that effort, and put it towards what you're excellent at and broadcast that unique message?
See, I love that, coming at it from a deductive perspective rather than inductive, so that instead to look at your body of work as it is right now, whether you like it or not, and comb through and say, what are you drawn to? What are the common threads? What are the words that are going to come out that you can use to define and describe your best stuff? I love that, because I think that could be really freeing for a lot of folks who are tuning in. And the fact that it's almost like the yellow brick road model, where you went in the yellow brick road, you got to the wherever the yellow brick road led, and you looked back and went, oh, look, I had this all along. I just got to name it. And that helped me get more defined and release some of the burden that I was carrying. Is that some of what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, it's very much what
Great.
I'm saying is it could be that you're already going that direction. You just need to put a stamp on it that says, this is what I'm doing. It could be that you really are a shotgun spread on everything of what you're photographing, and making that decision it's gonna be a little difficult. But talk to the people that that love you, and talk to the people that what their perception is of you. And sometimes it's good to get an outside perspective from a spouse on what he or she sees you really love, and then take a personal inventory and say, you know what, if I could do one thing for the rest of my life, this is what I could do, and explore. And you know what, it's hard to choose, but just if you do it and you fail, then you back up and you try something else. But and the worst thing that you can do is to slowly fail at something, at being a generalist, to the point where you realize all of a sudden you're doing so many diversified things that you hate everything about that field, and then you bail anyways.
You're inspiring me.
Let's see some other questions.
This idea of fail quick and fail early makes sense to me. A couple other questions here. Barbara asked a question. This is really interesting to me. She says, hi, Mike and Dane. My question is simply, are home studios antiquated for today's creative? I know my answer to this because I just moved my studio home. But what do you think, honestly?
Here's the thing. I've had a home studio, and I've have a regular studio, which is our studio lounge. Here you can see. Honestly, when it comes down to it, business-wise, what's profitable, what's sustainable, what makes sense for you.
Yep.
I don't believe in going in an enormous amount of debt, especially in an economy that is not 100% certain. I recommend driving as hard as you can and really pushing your character as the biggest tool of leveraging who you are. And I don't want to get into a whole new can of worms in terms of that, but I think if you can make it professional, if you can make it comfortable, and you can make it work for you and the type of clientele. I mean, if you want to work with uber high-end clientele and they just met with their coordinator at the Four Seasons and they come to you and it doesn't really fit, well, that may not work. But just make sure it fits with whatever type of clientele that you're seeing, so that for them, they don't even blink. It's whatever. And every single kind of clientele.
I like that.
Whether you have an artsy.
Well, I mean, related to that is this idea of a lot of ingredients go into booking a gig, and one could be the car you drive, the clothes you wear, where you meet. And then there's your images. There's a lot of personality, a lot that goes into it. And if that's just one ingredient, to pick the best one that's going to fit for your target. And then on top of that, I think like what you said, Micah, relative to the business, it might be worth taking a look at PPA's benchmark survey, where they're pretty clear on hard statistics that home-based studios have a greater chance of viability and profitability than retail-based studios. But ultimately, like you're saying, you want to have the right tool for the job. So it's really a matter of deciding where you're going to position yourself, and that should define whether or not you have a space or you don't.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Here's another question.
I think there's a lot of
good question
resources
from.
out there.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think there's a lot of good resources out there that photographers should tap into, like that benchmark study series.
Totally. Yeah.
One thing I was going to mention.
Hey, Jeff,
every photographer. Sorry, there's a delay.
Go ahead.
I think every photographer should have
There is.
board of directors or consultants in there helping them make the decisions, because I'll be honest, like, I've been an entrepreneur for 13 years and I still have consultants and board of directors that I can go in front of and I say, hey, look, I'm going to make a decision. Like, the amount of our expenditure budget could be $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. I don't know, wherever you're at, $50,000, $20,000. This is everything that I'm spending. Is this going in the right areas? And every single there's no. You look at the biggest Fortune 500 companies; they have a board of directors that says this is smart and this is not. So it's not a pride thing of saying, well, I don't need that because whatever. I mean, everyone does it. Your question.
This Jeff's honest question of, is trying everything a good way to figure out what you're going to be passionate about? I mean, especially given what you were saying at the beginning of your career, Mike, when you were shooting in 1,000 different directions. Didn't that serve a purpose for you to discover what you were supposed to be doing?
I think when you're first starting out, trying everything, and maybe we can redefine this. Let's assume that photography is exactly what you want to go into. You just don't know what you like. Yeah, I think it's smart to do a little bit of due diligence and market research and find out what's profitable and what's not. If you're going to go into photographing, landscape products, and you realize, gosh, there's not really a market for that. Well, maybe that's an indication of it's not a really good field to go into. What else are you passionate about? So I think searching, experimenting, trying, especially if you're early and you don't have a business, you don't have a reputation, then I don't have anything to lose of trying out things. But what I would say is, don't quit your day job and then go start trying to find out everything. Explore everything. Kind of at least have some transitionary period where you're finding out what you want to do, finding out what you're passionate about and what works, and kind of getting insight and coaching from others.
That's great. Hey, I'm so bummed that we have a bunch of questions still in the hopper and other comments in the chat room and everywhere else, and we're already way over time. So I want to just take a couple quick questions. M. Thomas asked the question, if your target market is vacationers, what's the best way that you would try to get their attention?
Vacationers. I'm wondering what context this is in, what type of photography.
Yeah, I wonder too. It's funny, I will say this. I was in a conversation once with Jessica Clare, who does a lot of destination weddings, and she made the comment that it might be shrewd to develop networking relationships where you're adding value to the lives of travel agents, or just other industry specialists around vacation regions, where you would be solving problems for them if you were to be a photographer available that they trusted. So that's one idea that came to mind for me. Is that resonant with you too, Mike?
I think that's a totally valid idea, and I think that is an option if that was your passion and you felt called to that area. And doing that, I think vacationers is great. I think that any business idea has to have a niche. You have to have some type of passion for that niche. You got to have some type of model and plan for getting there, strategic positioning and goals of how you're going to achieve it.
Yeah, I agree. The challenge, I think, in my experience with vacationers is the idea that, in my experience, when vacationers are vacationing, they might have more disposable income, but sometimes they're a challenging group to have a conversation with, especially around meaningful art creation. And then secondly, the idea of I don't know, when people are vacationing and I don't get to vacation, because if I'm shooting their photographs, I'm not vacationing. So don't get confused with liking vacationing with liking vacationers, is what comes to mind for me. But great question, Ed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
I know someone who captures families who come to Paris and who want themselves to be captured for a day or for a couple hours, and they do just a documentary style of their family experience. I know that's a viable business, and it's just a matter of really getting plugged into, like Jessica said, the vacation planners. But the other thing to consider too is, as you go along and as you become develop your style and as you kind of figure it out, it was interesting. I think Jasmine Starr put this really, really succinctly. Her last talk that she's been talking about as her thing. Specifically, I like the way she worded this. Not in terms of, I'm not saying you should copy what she's doing, but she has a filter, which fun, fresh, and fabulous. What's on her blog, what's on her website, what people can get their hands around, what she talks about, the way that everything she's associated with, there's a filter for everything, regardless of whether it's adventurous, location-based, vacationers, adjective descriptions of the type of clients you have. You have to be consistent in all areas of what you're doing, and it has to be something that people would look at you and would say, yeah, that you totally play that part. So I think that's important to consider with whatever you're choosing. And if travel is really the lifestyle you love, and you really want to be traveling, then make sure that's something you love and it's not just a seasonal thing in your life.
Jamie Bermudez asked a great question. Where can new photographers go to get information about industry? Part of me thinks, where can't they go? There's a lot of information available now. Where would you direct people to, Mike?
I would direct people to a couple different areas. First off, I think this is a great source here on Fast Track Coaching. I think WPPI, for those of you guys who are attending WPPI, that's an awesome connection there to be able to really get your hands on and not only meet photographers face to face, but get plugged in with a lot of the platform talks. I think probably at least the Pictage forums I've been part of since 2005. I think those are great. The B School has a new version 2 out that I think is great. If you're in Europe, there's something called phototv.de, and that's another source that I've participated a lot with that I think is wonderful. Those are just a few, just to name a couple.
That's great. You mentioned B School, and for those of you who are fast trackers, if you don't know this already, anyone who's a member of the Fast Track forums are going to get the B Schools for free as an extension of it. Plus, we're going to have a special private section of B School just for fast trackers, so it's grumpy free. And you'll get again, if you're signed up for Fast Track forums, you're going to get B School, the whole of it, for free. And that should be transitioning in the next couple days. I'm actually going to be on the B School Study Hall on Thursday, so we'll be talking more about that then. I hope you'll join in over at thebschool.com. And if this has been valuable to you at all, would you guys take just a few minutes? First off, be sure to be following Mike Larson Inc. MikeLarsoninc is Mike's Twitter, and he's always not only coming up with great stuff but passing along great stuff. Be smart for you to pay attention to him there. And if this is valuable, whether it be to tweet out Fast Track Photo or me, I sure would be grateful. You have no idea how much of an encouragement that kind of thing is, to know that this is not just beneficial for a few, but the few is extending. So, and also, who you'd like, inviting Mike on came from a direct request, and thankfully Mike's a good friend. But if you have other folks that you'd like to have on the show, let me know, and I'll do whatever I can to try to get them to join in. But Mike, you are getting ready to speak at WPPI in just a couple weeks. I'll be at WPPIU before the convention begins. Jerry and I are actually opening up the WPPIU event, but I know you're doing a really special event on Sunday as well as something on Thursday, and I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
Certainly. On Sunday, February 20th from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m., I'm giving a talk on defining your style, which is it's laid out kind of what we talked about here, but a lot more. It's a two-hour talk. The second half of the hour, we're doing a special guest panel, and I've invited some people who I think are great in the industry, including Jose Villa, Mike Colon, Jesh de Rox, his photographers, and we're also bringing on Summer Watkins as a stylist perspective, and two blogs. We're bringing on 100 Layer Cake and Style Unveiled, and they're going to be we're all going to be sharing and discussing our viewpoints on photographers defining their style, how the photographers have done it, how a stylist perspective, and from the blog perspective, what it looks like from a blog perspective, seeing hundreds, thousands of submitted work and what their perception is. So it's going to be really interesting, fascinating dialogue, kind of discussing defining your style. And then Thursday is all about character marketing at Photographer Ignite, which is really cool. It's the second annual Photographer Ignite, which is 25-minute presentations by 20 photographers, and that's going to be really cool.
Great. Well, thanks again, Mike. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you and being roommates shortly. And take care, and God bless you, man.
You too, and thank you guys all for watching today. Have a great day.
Okay. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.